It's one of those subjects talking about conflict is, when you stop and think about it, who actually taught you how to deal with conflict? Formally, most of us have never ever been trained as to how to deal with conflict. You just learned about it growing up, didn't you? By observation. You either do it the same as mum and dad, or mum or dad, or you do the opposite, right? Whatever. So this afternoon we're going to talk about how do we deal with conflict, and I'm going to start by reading this quotation to you, which comes from Peter Bolton's book, People Skills, and he says something that resonates for me. He says, "I hate conflict." Well, you got my attention straight away when I read that, because that's how I feel. Nobody likes conflict. Nobody likes dealing with conflict. You just want everything to be peaceful and happy, see? And he says, "In fact, I detest it. Often it erupts. Once it erupts, conflict is difficult to control." Okay? And love, or emotional connection, which I've put in there, only endures when dissension is faced openly. Right? So you only get to connect with each other if you're able to work through your differences and hear each other and deal with your dissension. Then he makes this statement, which is interesting. He says, "We cannot find personal intimacy without conflict." We never get to understanding and emotional connection without having some understanding of the difference and, connecting with the other person. So I have a seminar which I conduct, which I've called "Conflict is the Gateway to Intimacy." Because if you're able to deal with conflict, if you're able to deal with your differences, you get to understand each other better. Now, some of you are looking at me like, "Are you serious?" But it's true. Love and conflict are somewhat inseparable. And so I'm going to just make a couple of comments here about conflict. Conflict is normal. It's an unavoidable part of all relationships, good and bad relationships. Doesn't matter. See, the whole idea we were talking about this morning about there being a perfect family doesn't exist. A perfect marriage, I've never seen one. I've had people say to me that they've got the perfect marriage. Haven't had an argument in 56 years. I want to know what's going on. Maybe they live in separate rooms or something, Conflict is a natural, normal, unavoidable part of life. You can't take two different people, whether you accept that they're male and female, quite apart from that. We all have our own individual journey, and when we get married, when we come into family, we bring with us all our previous journey, the things we've learnt, the things that we are, and it's different to our partner, And so we work out our craziness on our kids. They pick it up, and that's how we perpetuate family. So there's no such thing as a perfect family. But there are families who have learned how to deal with each other and their differences, understand each other's heart, and connect. And so I always say that marriage and family is built on emotional connection. That's really what the heart of marriage is about. Two people who connect at the emotional, at the heart level, right? A good friend of mine, Sharon Hart Morris, wrote a book called The Safe Haven Marriage, in which she describes intimacy as being, "I allow you to hold my heart in your hand and know you won't crush it." Intimacy is where I can share with you my dreams and my fears and my fear of being afraid about stuff, and know that you are on my side, that you're with me. Right? When I know that you know me that well, then we have an emotional connection. We understand each other's heart. Okay? Anyhow, so the other thing I was going to say is this, that therefore learning how to manage conflict, right? And I use the word deliberately, manage, suggests that there's a process that we involve ourselves in that is able to bring us to the point where we are able to manage or work with conflict in a constructive manner. And as I say, that's pretty challenging for all of us to do. Something that we've never been taught how to do. The greatest cause of relationship failure is not conflict, but avoiding conflict. A lot of research has been carried out that shows that, everybody thinks that it's conflict that destroyed the marriage or destroyed the family, right? But it's not so much conflict that's the killer, it's not dealing with the conflict effectively, right? If you know how to deal with it, you can work your way through your differences and, find a connection and grow together and have a good, good strong family. When conflict is avoided, it's very disruptive and very destructive. And you often find that in families and in marriages that people say, well, there are some things we just don't talk about. There are places we don't go because we know that that's going to bring up a torrent of disagreement and it's going to be hurtful and it's not worth doing. So it's like we're invested in sort of, finding peace at whatever cost, right, as a way to avoid. Understanding and connection is threatened when you stop listening, respecting, and connecting with the other person. So the way in which we maintain the connection is by showing respect, by listening, which is a very powerful way of saying, I'm with you, I connect with you, I understand you, or I'm wanting to understand you. And as you do that, you find that you understand each other and connect better with each other. Understanding grows and deepens when you're able to reconcile your differences. Now, I just listed down 4 benefits that there are in being able to do this effectively. The first is that it promotes open, honest communication. You can talk with each other and share whatever it is, and in sharing, you learn more information about each other and the relationship, about the family, right? So it's a vehicle for knowing each other. It provides opportunity for the expression of hurt, fear, and anger, and it reduces the prospect of resentment and bitterness and revenge. Now, these are the key emotional things that happen as a result of failed connection. We get frustrated, we get annoyed, we get angry, and anger can become the resentment and bitterness and a desire for revenge, which can undermine and threaten the whole relationship. So knowing how to do that, if you can handle conflict effectively, it provides you opportunity to deal with all of those emotions that can often be the barriers to you making connection with each other. And it builds trust and confidence through respect and goodwill. And we all know, it's part of our folklore that the bottom line for any relationship is trust. Respect and trust. If you don't trust each other, what have you got? And last of all, I made this comment that it leads individuals to feel good about themselves and satisfied with the relationship. So if you're able to deal with conflict, it gives you a feeling that, yeah, we can do this, We understand each other, we can work together, and so it raises the level of satisfaction that you feel about being in the relationship. So those things are very important. Now, when it comes to managing or dealing with conflict, what we know from a lot of research, and that of course looks a bit sort of like gobbledygook at the moment, let me explain what that is. There are 5 ways or 5 styles that we tend to adopt in dealing with conflict. And it's based on two things. The degree on this side here, the quadrant, vertical, whatever, assertiveness. The degree to which you are able to speak for yourself, say what you think, say what you want. That is important for you to be able to enter into a relationship in a way that you don't get put down or you don't get, sort of walked all over. There's no aggressiveness in the relationship or submission. You're able to put it out there. That's what I think. That's what I feel. Now, what that says is that to be assertive, and I know that most people think when you say assertive that you mean aggression. But an assertive person is somebody who is able to stand up for themselves without putting somebody else down, right? So you have a right to what you think and feel, and I have that right too. So I'm able to let you know what that is, and you're able to let me know what you think and feel about stuff, and we're able to work that difference out together because I feel good about myself and you feel good about yourself, right? So that's the assertiveness side of things. The other element is the degree to which you will cooperate. Now, of course, if you're in a relationship where you don't cooperate with your partner, it's not going to go far very quickly, is it? Right? It's, as a friend of mine says, it's like pushing mud uphill. Right? It's very hard to do. Right? So the degree to which we cooperate and are assertive, when you look at those two axes, you come up with 5 different styles. And let me explain what these styles are. On the top left-hand corner there, you've got someone who's very high in assertiveness to the point of being aggressive, and someone who's very low in cooperation. So this is the sort of person who tends to resolve conflict by always being the winner. They always get it right. They're the it's a bit like it's my way or the highway. Right? Do it how I say or forget it. Right? And they're likely to be strong or be seen to be strong and likely to sort of, you're a bit afraid of someone who's that strong, because they're likely to walk all over you or just maybe even get abusive and tell you, shut up and mind your own business and do what I say or whatever. That's the worst end, extreme of it. Right, so now down in this left-hand bottom corner, you've got someone who's low in assertiveness, doesn't stick up for themselves, and on the other hand, they're not very cooperative.
See if there's a pointer in this thing.
Oh.
It might help you.
You mean to stop me walking around?
No.
But I like walking around,
No,
though.
it's not a matter of walking around.
Oh, that's just so you can see.
Yes.
Which I'm talking about. Is that it? Oh, there you are. It's green.
It's the green one.
It's green. It's for go. Oh, good. Oh, thank you, Dave. I knew you weren't just sitting there. See? Oh, look, I feel powerful now. I can make a green light come up on a screen. Yeah, so these people we might call avoiders or withdrawers. I sometimes, if you were referring to these 5 styles in sort of native animals, I'd call these people wombats. Because, it's just a stupid label, of course. But these are the people who, they disappear on you, They may just physically get up and walk out. They avoid the conflict totally. They may not get up and walk out, but emotionally they check out. They're not there. They're there, but they're not there, And there's probably good reasons why, an avoider withdraws. Maybe it's about, taking care of themselves by disappearing so they don't have to face it all, right? Okay. So then you've got somebody over here on the lower left-hand, on the right-hand side. That's what we might call an accommodator, somebody who's low in assertiveness, right? But they're high in cooperation. So they're really wanting to be in the relationship and work with their partner or with the family, but they don't really, like, there's nothing in this for them. That they give up themselves, and it's like peace at all costs. Whatever the cost is, you tell me what you want to do, and that's fine with me. You know, it's almost like, I'll do this if you love me. That's all I need. Just need for you to like me. I don't care what the decision is. Right? I give, and you take. Yeah. And it's funny how sometimes you encourage that by being that way, you know. Okay, now up the top here, we have what we've called collaboration or a resolver. This is a person who is very, very high in assertiveness and very high in cooperation. So they want to sit down at the table. They want everybody to be heard. They want to, you know, talk it out so that everybody wins and you've got a solution. Now, obviously, you know, that's going to take a little more time to get there. But it's often seen as an ideal place to be in terms of dealing with conflict. It may be ideal, you know. Most of us find it hard to be there, but, you know, that's how some of us are in the way we deal with it. Now, in the middle here, we've got a word called compromise, which kind of suggests something to Christian people that this is not talking about. I'm not talking about compromising your beliefs or your core values or whatever. I mean, it might be, but the whole idea here is that you're willing to give a little, you know. So the compromise position here, there's a good degree of assertiveness and concern for the relationship, and there's a high degree of cooperation. So it's like what some people call a win-win situation. I win, you win some, you know. I sometimes call this a lose-lose situation, you know, because you win some and you lose some, you know. It depends whether you're looking at the glass half full or half empty, you know. So they're the 5 sort of styles that typically we adopt when it comes to dealing with conflict. Now, what we know from our research is this, that in the first 2 years of a relationship, yeah, maybe even before that, but yes, a couple establish their fight pattern and how they resolve conflict, and it doesn't change much after that, right? Now, I said a dominant style because there's a way that you tend to do that, but that doesn't mean that sometimes you don't use some of the other styles. But there tends to be, in the relationship, you establish a kind of a balance in the relationship. This is how we do it. This is how it works for us. And it gets locked in, right? Now, you're probably sitting there thinking while I'm talking about this, how you deal with conflict yourself in your family, in your relationship with your partner, right? You probably already identified which is your dominant style, right? So it's interesting to ask ourselves the question, where did you learn this particular style from, this dominant style? You know, we've already talked about it briefly, that we learn a lot from our family. There are other things that can influence us, right? So I tell you what I'm going to do, just so that you're not sort of sitting there with your eyes half closed and your mind at the beach. I'm going to ask you to, do you want to sort of get involved a bit? Do you want to do, yeah, oh, I can see somebody does. Okay, so what I'm going to ask is, if you happen to be dominant style competitor, I'm going to ask you to come and sit here in this front row here. It's all right, that's not the only one I'm going to ask. And if you're an avoider, I'm going to put you here in the back 2 rows just before the camera, right? And if you happen to be the collaborators, I'm going to ask you to come and sit over here. Yeah. I don't want you looking around a room and checking out somebody else. I'm just talking about you, right? You can make a choice as to which your dominant style is. Now, if you're an accommodator, these 2 rows back here, right? And if you're a compromiser, Now, you can't all be compromisers, so you're going to have to move. So, in the middle here somewhere, all right? So I'm going to give you one minute to just get focused and move to that part of the church where you see yourself. Over here, winners. Over here, avoiders, compromisers, accommodators, resolvers. All right? I haven't got any music right now I can play to just cover this gap. Okay? I could. Right. Oh, this is good. We got movement. It's all happening. He just made one. Good. All right. Nobody in the middle here moved. Are you transfixed or? Huh? You're about to come up with a compromise. I can see that. All right. If you have to just push yourself a little bit towards one of the styles as dominant, just do that, because I know there are some people who say, "Oh, I'm all 5 of them." Well, okay, don't cop out. Just find one. Yeah, no, you should know yourself where you are. Otherwise, you are an avoider. All right, so are we all good? Right, now, in your group, I want you to talk to each other, and I want you to answer 4 questions. Because what we're going to do is, when time's up for the discussion, I'm going to come to each group, and I'm going to ask you to share with the rest of us what it is that your answers to the 4 questions are. And hopefully we might be surprised and learn something about why people do it the way they do it. Right? Because there are good reasons why we resolve conflict the way we do. Right? So, here are the 4 questions. Now, I haven't got them on the screen, and I was going to get you to write them down, but nobody's got a pen or a pencil or paper with them. But they're 4 very simple questions, and that is this. Number 1, where did you learn this style? Okay? Where did you learn it? Number 2, what do you like about it? Number 3, what do you dislike about it? And number 4, if you had a chance to change your style, which style would you adopt? Okay? Where'd you learn it? What do you like? What do you dislike about it? And if you had a chance to make a change, what style would you adopt? Okay? So just take 5 minutes or so to discuss those 4 among yourself. Pool your collective wisdom, and then you can share it with the rest of us, which will be very enlightening for us, I think. Okay? We're not going to use this to threaten or bash anybody up. We're just going to learn from each other in this process. Okay, away you go. Some of you might just have to turn a little bit so you can talk together. So you okay. Yeah. Okay, so why don't you move a little closer and no, yes. 2 more minutes. 2 more minutes. All right, well, I'm going to ask you just to stay where you are, and I'm going to come now to each group and get you to share with me your thoughts, and the rest of us will listen. We might learn some interesting things from each other in this capacity. Some of you, I don't want you looking around the room to see where the other member of your family is seated and start thinking, nasty thoughts about why they're there or whatever. That's not the purpose of this exercise. Now, I think I'll start first of all with, we'll start with the accommodators because they're very accommodating. Yeah, of course you will. So guys, tell me, where did you learn this, do you think? Where did you learn this style? Okay. Uh-huh, uh-huh. So family is a very strong influence in, yeah, definitely. Okay. Yep, yep. Yeah, and sometimes if it works that way, it's cool. Don't mess with it. Yeah. So, what do you guys like about it? This style, accommodating. No. Yeah. It's quicker. It's very giving. Yeah. And it avoids the conflict, so you just, yeah, that's cool. Is there anything you dislike about it? No. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah. So the danger is you might have to give up a lot of yourself. Yeah, yeah, yeah. How about the rest of you? Like, no, but like, changing the position. Is there anywhere else that would be more attractive than being here? Here, you're going to slide across this way. You compromise a bit more. So a little bit more of you coming out to, yeah. Very good. Thank you for sharing. I'm just going to ask the rest of you now, when you hear them describe that's the way they do it, how does that sound to you? How does that come across to you? It sounds more like avoidance to you, does it? Yeah, yeah. Sorry? Oh, yeah, it feels like a cop-out. So how would that feel if you, yeah, how would that feel for you if you were in that sort of situation? Yeah. So allowing yourself maybe to be taken advantage of, that's how it feels for you, yeah. Okay. All right. So thank you, guys. Excellent. I made a little chart of my own just so that I could impress myself. And I put down some of the strengths and weaknesses of each style, see? And here for the accommodators, some of their strengths are that they are very often seen as good servants, which in Christian circles is a huge tick in the box. Very giving, very sacrificial. We had that idea come through. And willing to defer to others, right? Now, in Christian circles, they can be very strong positives, right? Very sacrificial and giving and so on. On the downside, or the weaknesses, you might say, that can sometimes look like it's a little bit manipulative, like, I'm given in to you in order that I get something out of this, which is that we don't have conflict, or that I'm happy to go along with what you want. But when I don't get what I want and it feels like you're being horrible towards me, I can sort of, say, look, I do all this for you. How come you're being so horrible to me, right? So there's that little bit, look at me, poor servant, maybe even to the point of being a martyr. Now, I've sometimes said to people who see themselves as accommodating in a relationship, that it feels like you could easily become a doormat, where people walk all over you because you're willing to accommodate. So it feels like you give up a lot of yourself in order to keep the peace, And, there may be in all of that the fear that if I don't give in, you won't like me. So, there's a sense in which I might be tempted to give in order that you'll just love me and like me, and I'm no trouble to you, so I get my need met to be loved, and you get to do whatever we're going to do. So there may be some downsides to that as well. So, but anyhow, thank you for sharing. It gives us a little window into understanding how that style works. Now, I better go to the avoiders before they leave and get out of the place. Right, so tell me, you guys, don't look at me like that. It looked like you were already down the hole, Okay, so where did you guys learn this style, do you think? Mum? Yep. Dad? Yep. She learned to just avoid, keep out of the road. Yeah, okay. Was there something about this that you could highlight that you really like about this style? Yeah, yeah. So when you see yourself like doing that, how does that work? Where do you, what do you say to yourself? Where do you go? What's going on when you say, I need to just get out of here? Do you feel under pressure? Do you feel like yeah, a lot of pressure. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And so is that about you, or is it about the conflict? Yeah. Right. Is there a sense for you like it's a way of hiding yourself so you don't get hurt or crushed or caught up in the... Yeah, okay. Yeah. Anybody else got a comment about what you like about this? So is there a sense... Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Right. Oh. Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. So, like, is there a sense from what you were saying that you feel sometimes a little bit trapped? Yeah. Conflict free. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, if you guys could change to another style, would you, or where would you go? Compromise. Okay. You're going to drift over this way. Okay. Excellent. Thank you for sharing. That's great. So the rest of you, when you're listening to this, what's going on for you? What are you feeling? What do you think about that style, avoiding? What do you think? Doesn't do anything for you? No? Doesn't solve anything? No. Sorry? The problem's still there in some form, yeah. Yeah. So I wonder if it's a conflict-free zone and, where does it go? Where does the conflict end up going if you don't resolve it, if you don't talk about it? Uh, okay. Anybody else? How does that kind of feel for you? Thanks, guys, for sharing. I appreciate that. Here's my little take on it. Avoiders. Oftentimes, this is about temporary relief. It's getting away from something, time to cool down and process through the emotion that you're feeling. Oftentimes I've had people say to me, it's like, I need time for me first to get myself under control and deal with all the emotion. It's like the wombat disappears down the hole, gets it all sorted out, re-emerges, everything's cool, and it's like, okay, you're back, so what's your answer? It's like, what is wrong with you? I've sorted this all out. How come you haven't sorted it out? It's like, really? Okay. So there's a little bit of that, which, is about, it's seen as a strength for an individual who, is caught up in avoiding stuff because it's about processing and dealing with themselves first. As we've pointed out, some of the downsides to that is it avoids the problem. Communication breaks down. It's pretty hard to talk to a silent wall. And sometimes there's this this sounds a bit strange, but there's this sense of superiority that comes, look, well, I've sorted it all out. What's wrong with you? So sometimes it's like in avoiding it, you create the opinion or the view that you're above it all, that it doesn't touch you, when in fact it touches you greatly. All right, so compromise. I'll make a compromise and go into the middle here now. See what have we got here? Compromises. So where did you guys learn this style, do you think? Family style. Yep. Yep. Okay. Yeah. 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 Like a referee. They should have hired you for the title fight coming up next week. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. That's how we get drawn into that. So what do you guys like about this style for you? Okay. So it feels like you're valuing the relationship and wanting to bring, yeah, yeah, So do you see it as a reasonable approach to, yeah, okay. Is there anything you dislike about it? Like, it sounds pretty good, really, the way you describe it. A bit wishy-washy. So that sounds again like you can sometimes feel a bit trapped in it all. You know, like I'd like this to work a bit easier. Please step up, you know. Yeah. So how come you can't be flexible? You know, I'm being flexible. How come you can't be? You know, meet me halfway. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, like, would you think of changing, or like, you know, or is this a pretty comfortable? Yeah. So you might slide a bit that way, you think? Yeah, get a bit strong. Yeah, yeah. Okay, very good. Yeah. Well, and to build team, it's important to be able to bring people in, but sometimes you have to make a decision, you know, which is hard. All right, thank you. Excellent. What do the rest of you think about that style? I don't want you to attack anybody. Just, you know, what do you think of that style? How does that come across to you? Does that sound pretty perfect to you, or no? Something to aim for. Okay, yeah. All right, so that sounds a little more sort of, if you like, team sort of work together. Yeah. Anybody else? All right, so here's my go on it. Compromises. Very open to relationship, want to bring people together. Have confidence that this is a respectful way to sort of work. In fact, they model respect, and they tend to be reconcilers. They want things to come together and work that way. As was suggested, they can sometimes feel, though, a little bit trapped, caught in the role. Some might see them as weak and wishy-washy. Come on, stand up for what you want. Come on. And sometimes it takes a bit long to get to decisions because you're back and forth, and so on. And most of us get a bit impatient with that, so say, oh, forget it, you know. Or if there's conflict involved, it's like, really? Forget it. You know, I don't want to keep this going. So, thank you. Very good. Now, I better get over here to the winners because they've got this sorted and they're going to give us... No, it's all right. It's interesting, though, that oftentimes people, other people see you as strong, and it may not be exactly how you see yourselves with all of that. So let me ask you, what is it about this that you like? Well, I was going to ask you first about where you learned it, but is that pretty similar to the rest of the parents and stuff like that? Okay, yeah. I mean, personality might have a little bit to do with it, and, you know, life's experiences and so on, but basically it sort of seems to be learned in family, all right? So what did you have for what you like about it? Not much. I like your honesty. No, sorry. Trying to provide a solution. And I wonder if that's really what drives a lot of, you know, what happens for winners, is that, you know, there is a solution and you can get to it a lot quicker than others because you know it. You know, and it's there. It's about getting the job done. It's about having a solution. Okay. Yeah. So seeing it quickly and then being a little impatient that people don't sort of come to the party immediately, you have to kind of, I mean, yeah, sometimes, like, would you sometimes see yourself as being a bit, what, dogmatic or domineering or, yeah, in order to achieve that, right? So is there anything you dislike about it? Frustration? Right. Right. So in itself it creates conflict because you're getting frustrated and, okay, yeah, fair enough, good. And like if you could change, I mean this is unthinkable, I know, but if you could change, where would you move to, do you think? You'd, yeah, compromise a bit more, okay. Yeah, cooperate, a bit more cooperation, yeah, inviting others in. Right, thank you, that's cool. Yeah. And I mean, where does that grow from? Like, is there a bit of impatience for yourself that you sort of got it together, don't fuss with me, just do it? But then I stop listening to what you have to say. Yeah, okay, fair enough. Well, that was cool. Thank you. So what do the rest of you think about that style? I know many people can see it as a bit intimidating, a bit strong, but how does that come across to you now you hear them explain the ups and the downs of it all? It's interesting, you know, but a lot of our leaders come out of this style because it's about getting the job done and they show good assertiveness and leadership and so it happens, you know. We let them have it. We don't want to fight with them, okay. All right, so here's my little piece on it. It's about measurable results, about getting things done. The issues are often very clear, black and white. Persuasive arguments are something that they use quite well to augment the relationship. They have the energy to get things going and they use that energy well. So there's a lot of positivity about that style of approach to conflict and dealing with issues. On the other hand, as was suggested, sometimes it's easy to misunderstand what the motivation is. Think they're just being aggressive, dogmatic, dominant, you know, don't listen, that sort of thing. But I suspect that it's more about, you know, being sure of the solution and getting on with the job. In the main, that's where it seems to come from. So you have don't listen, sometimes drive over the top of people, and that impatience comes through. But one of the things that you often find for winners is that they feel the lack of relationship because somehow others have fallen away or distanced themselves from them, and so that it's a bit lonely at the top, you know. And sometimes that can create a feeling of guilt. Well, there's a little bit of that maybe in there, yeah. All right, so thank you guys for sharing that point of view. That's great. Which leaves us only with two warriors over here who've hung in, and they're still here. So what do you think? Collaboration. Where do you reckon you guys learnt this style? Church administration. Okay. For 33 years. Yeah. So, I mean, what was attractive to you about using that style?
Well, it didn't leave anyone feeling that they're guilty or they're the wrong ones because it worked out a solution for both.
Right, okay. And for you, was that similar, you think?
Yes, I've workplace, but my background's in management of people, so I'm trying to bring them all together to make sure that everyone is happy with what we're doing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Right. So that sounds like that's what you like about it, that it works in bringing people together and building team and, yep. Is there anything you dislike about it? Time and energy. Yeah. Politics. Yeah. Yeah. So if you had a chance to change, would you, or over there, would you, to the... Yeah. Right. Interesting, eh? Yeah. Where you have a little bit more authority and control that you can exert, it's easier to go there. But when you're in the workplace and you've got to make it work, it's sort of like, okay, well, I have to do it this way, yeah. And I think we're all like that. We, choose different styles for whatever the issue is. But in the emotional relationship, often we end up doing it, similar ways all the time. Thank you, guys. How does that sound to you? How does that come across? Is that... Well, you can't say too much because the pastor's in this corner, but... Yeah, yeah. Really? Yeah. But in relationship... Yeah, yeah. Oh no, I think that there's a lot of people who, he's such a wonderful person to work with at work. I can't imagine when you tell me that he's such a dragon at home. I just can't put the two together. Relationship specific. Yep, it is. All right, so my final little piece was, resolvers tend to begin with principle of what should be. So there's a bit of like shoulds in there. Seeking to understand the whole truth, the truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God. Very relational, flexible, desire the truth, can be caught up in being the peacemaker or the peacekeeper. They're some of the positive things. On the other side here, you've got idealism. Sometimes it's not seen as altogether realistic to hang in. Just get it done, So there can be that, it being emotionally tiring. Sometimes a person can be seen as a bit pushy because they're always pursuing, come to the table, sit down, let's talk it out, let's hear each other, Can often end up disappointed and discouraged unless things do get resolved, which sometimes they don't. You need a lot of patience to see that everybody wins, and you can end up sometimes feeling very frustrated. And anybody who's been in these leadership type roles that are being described here will tell you that, it can be very frustrating at times, because to get to that point, there are some people you just don't seem to be able to satisfy, and they won't speak up because they maybe feel afraid and intimidated or whatever. So, interesting how this plays out. Now, John Gottman, who's one of the leading researchers in terms of marital research, last 30 years, has published a number of things about his observations about communication and conflict and how relationships work and so on. And he says there are 4 very destructive patterns that undermine relationships. And the first one, he says, is where people escalate conflict and it gets out of control. This is where one partner responds back, so I get mad with you, so you get mad with me. And then it sort of builds and it starts to get out of control. And one of the things that escalates is where there are a lot of negative comments that spiral things up and up and up. And into that comes a lot of anger and frustration. So number 1, escalation. Number 2, he talks about invalidation. This is where you very subtly, very quietly put down the other person, or discount their comments or ignore what they're saying. It's a very powerful way of saying you don't count, you don't matter, I don't have to take any notice of anything you say. So that invalidation, which may take many subtle forms, can be a very powerful way of undermining a relationship. And this can happen with a partner, with your kids, in the workplace, whatever. Those sort of comments can be very, very damaging. And it may be so subtle that you don't even notice it half the time. But eventually it begins to white ant the relationship. Number 3, he says, is a very, very powerful way, is where there's withdrawal or avoidance, where you simply don't deal with the issue. One partner shows an unwillingness to get into or stay with important discussions, and the withdrawer often tends to get quiet during an argument and may agree quickly to some suggestion just to end the conversation. Now, it's very hard to have conflict resolution or even have an argument with someone who won't say anything. You can't hit them because they didn't say anything. You can't get mad with them because you don't know what to get mad with them about, except that they're not there. But he says that's a very, very powerful way of undermining a relationship. And the 4th one, he says, is where there's negativity in a relationship between you and the boss, you and your partner, you and the kids, where you constantly have a negative view of what the other one's doing, right? So you're always pointing out, you're always saying negative things about, oh, well, you didn't, you know. So that pattern makes the conflict or disagreement harder to deal with constructively because it's just so negative. And it's very hard to live with someone who's negative, always negative, right? So let me just say a few words and then we'll finish about conflict itself. And it's probably good to define what it is we're actually talking about, because oftentimes when we talk about conflict, we get a few things muddled up as to what we're really talking about. And I think this is why it's so difficult for us to sometimes deal with. And that is, a mentor of mine, Newton Maloney, wrote a book about conflict, and he said we need to define the difference between a conflict and a problem. Now, oftentimes we talk about, well, I've got a problem and it's a conflict between us. Okay, so what are we talking about when we use these words? When we use the word conflict, he suggests that we're more talking about our inner response, our feelings, our emotion to a particular threat, whether it's real or imagined, that endangers our status or our identity or our self-esteem. So this is the emotional impact that happens when there's a difference between us. He says the other thing is the problem itself, the issue that we're disagreeing about. It may be a value, it may be a belief, it may be something that we want, it may be a perspective that we hold or an opinion, whatever it is, that's the issue. But with the issue, there is behind the issue how I feel about the way we're dealing with the issue, and more particularly, the way I feel about your attack on me personally. That's what causes the pain. That's what causes the difficulty. Most of us, if we stayed in our head, we could logically work through and agree to disagree, or highlight where the differences are and speak very rationally about it. But it's the emotional component that makes it very difficult for us to deal with conflict, right? And so this leads me to say that there are 2 components of conflict, and that is the emotional dimension and the specific issue that we disagree about, which is very helpful, because when we come to saying, so how should I go about dealing with conflict? How should I deal with it in my relationship when there are some conflicting differences, needs, ideas, differences, whatever? It's often how I feel about, can I talk to you about this? Can I be heard? Or are you just rubbishing me? Are you being negative? Are you putting me down? Are you getting frustrated with me? And it's that emotion that becomes the biggest barrier to us being able to stay present and hear each other and listen to each other and be rational about working through our differences. So let's talk about the 2 components just briefly here. The first, the emotional. What I've discovered is that emotional distress is what lies at the heart of conflict, right? That's the big issue. And the second thing is that generates, therefore, a lot of feelings of anger and distrust and fear and defensiveness and resentment and rejection, all of those emotional things that come. When you talk to me like that, I feel like you don't care about me. I feel like you're out to you don't acknowledge what I brought to this relationship. You don't understand why I did what I did because you're not listening. So now I'm feeling an overwhelming negative emotion, which is often anger and hurt that I experience. And that makes it difficult. I can't hear a word you're saying while ever I'm feeling hurt. Right? That's the thing that stops me from getting to the point. And if I'm very quick to get hurt and angry, then we can argue as much as we like and we can escalate out of control, but we never get to resolve the issue because I'm not listening and you're not listening. We're into defending ourselves emotionally. We don't want to be hurt anymore. Right? And so too much negativity can become so very destructive. Now, this brings up the whole issue of the anger that occurs when you're under attack. And I consulted Mr. Webster, who gave me this definition, which I like. He says, anger is a very strong feeling of displeasure, very strong feeling. It's like when you fall in love, right? You know, it can knock out all your rational faculties. You just become gobbledygook. You know, well, anger's a lot the same. It's such a powerful emotion, it can distort your rational faculties, which is what often happens, right? Very strong emotion that's excited by a real or supposed injury. So I've been hurt, and it may be real or it may be just I suspect someone's talking behind my back, and it may not be true, but I suspect it, and so I get hurt by that. I don't trust those people. Right. So there's a reason why this strong feeling occurs, and what it results in, a desire for me to either get satisfaction or to get revenge. And it usually, the temptation is to get revenge before I can really work it all out, because working it out's too hard. There's too many obstacles in the way to me getting to that point. So as a result, our anger not only compounds the issue for us, but it makes it more and more difficult for us to get to solving the difference, the issue, right? So here's a little piece that I've learnt about anger, which I hope might be helpful, because, you know, as Christians, we have this idea, and it still exists, that anger's a sin. It's wrong. It's evil. Shouldn't happen, right? And we even have Bible texts. Matthew 5, if you're angry with your brother or sister, you're in danger of what? Hellfire. That doesn't sound too nice. Right? Or we have this verse in Ephesians 4 where Paul says, in your anger do not sin. Right? So it's pretty clear, anger's a sin. Is that what he's saying? It's not quite what he's saying here, is it? Well, see, now here's what J.B. Phillips said back in the 50s, I think he wrote. He translated this way. He said, if you are angry, be sure that it's not a sinful anger. So there's sinful anger and there's non-sinful anger. Would you go with that? Mm-hmm. So, righteous indignation. Yeah, I have a lot of that. Yeah. Well, I like the way the Message, Eugene Peterson, because I think he captures what Paul's trying to say here. He says this, go ahead and be angry. You do well to be angry. It's like anger is a natural, normal, God-given emotion. Nothing wrong with that. Did I say God-given, Dave? I wonder what that was about. See, God made us with a range of emotions. And a lot of our emotions have a number of functions. One is to tell you that there's something wrong, you've been hit. And the other is to give you the energy, the motivation to get up and do something to protect yourself or to sort things out. See? So what he's saying here is this, there's nothing wrong with anger. You know, that's the way we're wired. But don't use your anger as fuel for revenge. In other words, we're talking about managing your emotions. Dealing with this stuff. Now, I know this is hard. I speak from experience. You know, this is not easy, right? But what Paul's saying is that if you don't deal with your anger, it will deal with you. You know, what'll happen is you'll end up using it as fuel for revenge to get even. I'll get you. Don't you talk to me like that. I'll get you. It might take me 10 years, but I'll get you. Sooner or later, I'll get you. I'll find a time to do that. Is someone trying to communicate with me? Heather. When you said that, I didn't realise this is what you do to me. That's all right. So, but he goes on to say that if you don't deal with it in a positive kind of a way, the negativity will overcome you, and he says, don't stay angry, don't nurse it, don't hang on to it. Now, you know, some people can hang on to their anger for a long time. In fact, it becomes genetic, you know. There are some places in the world, and some of them are not too far from our own back doorstep, where the anger has been held over and influenced life over centuries. You know what I'm saying? And you can see life through very angry bars, if you like, if you see yourself imprisoned to it. And Paul says, don't stay angry, don't go to bed angry. So I always thought that was a good idea. Like, you know, sleep it off in the morning, everything's cool, you know, everybody feels different, refreshed, and it's gone away. No. Yeah. So Paul's saying, don't go on day after day, deal with it. Don't go to bed angry. What he's saying is, don't let this be something that goes on for day after day after week after month after year. Deal with it. Manage it. Right? Otherwise, it'll end up being fuel for revenge, and what you'll do is you'll give the devil a foothold in your life. The negativity, the anger, the evil that is generated out of all of these hurt feelings is going to be destructive to relationship. And the devil will get a foothold in there and he'll start ruining things. Right? Exactly. All this does is cause disconnection. God with relationships with others, you know. So that's why this is a very powerful thing, and it's worth for us, I think, just for a moment to reflect on that and to say to ourselves, here's a way that I've kind of come to understand that anger is, in a sense, a secondary emotion. First of all, you feel threatened or frustrated or hurt by something that's said or done, right? There's an immediate response of, ouch, that hurt. Oh, that's unfair. Why did you do it? Right? So, and then immediately when you sense that you've been hit, that you feel hurt, frustrated and so on, immediately you feel angry. You start feeling angry. This is the second emotion that occurs, and it's designed to protect you. Don't you talk to me like that. So I'm now pushing back. I'm now saying stop. Right? And it also gives me the energy to do that. Right? So I see that as a very protective thing that happens to us. Now the anger is okay. It's what you do with it. It can become destructive, or it can lead you to a more positive resolution or helpful place to be. But what we know is that if you hang on to anger, it very quickly turns into a third emotion, resentment. Right? Now resentment is something that it becomes like solid concrete. It can sit there and become a huge barrier or obstacle in your relationship, whether at work or at home with the kids or whatever. Unresolved anger creates these feelings that lead to a feeling of bitterness and a desire to get revenge. And it can sit there and percolate away, and it influences everything that goes on in that relationship. In fact, in my experience over 35 years as a marriage counsellor, I found one of the things which is most destructive in a marriage relationship or in a family relationship is where there's unresolved anger. It'll destroy relationship in a very powerful way and make it very hard for people to find a way back to connection. Very, very powerful. So any wonder that the Apostle Paul says, it's okay to be angry, but what you do with it, that's important. Recognise what's going on and what happens and find a way to get satisfaction. So I'm just going to finish by giving you I think there are three things that you can do to deal with conflict, ways to deal with it. First one, connect with and deal with the emotion first. Now, I like to tell this story because it illustrates what I'm about to say, and that is, years ago I was sitting in my office very early in the morning, just arrived, writing my little list for the day. I'm a list person, always got to have a list for the day. OCD, I know, Dave, it's okay, there is a way to heal that. And I'm sitting there writing, and suddenly I looked up, and a colleague of mine had rushed into my room, put his hands on my desk, leant right across in my face, and let me have it. He just went off like a frog in a sock, you know. I mean, it was just boom, boom, boom. And I was like blown away. Not just by the spray of his enthusiasm, but the whole thing was just like, what is going on here? I couldn't believe this. And after a couple of minutes, when he actually stopped to take a breath, I must have instinctively thought that this would be a good time to respond, or say something. And what came out of my mouth was, so I'm sensing that you're angry with me. And he did exactly what you did. He kind of rocked back on his heels and he laughed. And what was your first clue, he said. And I said, no, look, you're obviously upset. Do you want to talk about this? Sit down, let's talk. And it was amazing because visually, right in front of me, it was like I'd taken all the wind out of his sails. I'd acknowledged that he was angry and upset with me. So when we started, there'd been a misunderstanding, and I'd done some things he'd interpreted differently to what I meant them to be. But, so we talked it out, and we were a lot more rational about it. But when he first came in, who would have thought that I could have had a discussion with him? So what I'm saying is, deal with the emotion first. Connect with that. I'm sensing you're hurt. I'm sensing you're upset. Tell me what's going on. I can see that this is... Because what happens is, when someone attacks you like that, the first thing that you want to do is what? Defend yourself, right? Okay. Right? Now, you know this, that when you're in defense mode, you don't hear a single word the other person's saying, except you hear enough to know, I've got a good answer for that. That's not true, right? So I'm only listening enough to reorganise my armoury to blast you out of the water. Right? So there's no communication going on. There's a lot of words, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of stuff happening, but there's no connection. Right? See, and you're never going to get to connection or to deal with stuff rationally unless you acknowledge the emotion. See, and behind all of that is this. I feel hurt by what you said or did. That's why I'm so angry. I'm ticked off, man. Well, okay, I don't know what I said or did that made you this violent. So this is not about me, this is about you. So rather than me getting lost in defending myself, why don't I just try to connect with, so what's happening? Tell me what's going on. I can see you're upset, I can see you're hurt. Talk to me. Now, sometimes you can't talk to me because you're so over the top with rage that, it's a bit hard. So say, well, when things are a little calmer, let's talk about it, right? But if you don't, things get out of control or they never get resolved. Or if you're an avoider, you disappear like crazy. If you're an accommodator, you give in real fast and say, whatever. And so what happens is that the issue, you can't get to the issue until you first acknowledge all of the hurt, the pain, and all the stuff that's going on. And to do that, seek first to understand the feelings and reactions of the other person and recognise when you're being emotionally flooded. Now, this is a Gottman terminology, and he says that guys actually get overwhelmed emotionally much quicker than what women do. And what guys do when they get overwhelmed emotionally, because that's a bit scary for us, because, we're we're pretty fragile emotionally because we never get to that level oftentimes. So what happens is that we feel flooded, and what we want to do is just escape. So what happens is typically that men tend to take a step back, and what do women do? They take a step forward. Don't you abandon me or run away from me. Come back here. Tell me what... And so then you get what we typically call in marital counselling terms the pursue-withdraw syndrome. The more she pursues, the more he withdraws. The more he withdraws, the more she pursues. See? It's a very typical kind of dance, I call it a dance, that goes on between two people because they don't know how to deal with each other and with the issue. See? And so recognise that when you get to this point that you get emotionally flooded, and this happens for women as well, and so in order to anticipate that, learn how to calm yourself down when you're under attack. Talk to yourself, soothe yourself. This is not about me. This is about what's being said here, and I need to stay focused. So don't let me get all defensive. Let me stay calm, and if it's really too hard, then I probably need to call a time out, but at least to be able to soothe and validate yourself. And then listen non-defensively to the other person. We sometimes call this active listening, where you empathise with the other person's point of view, you hear what they say, you keep your mouth shut while they're talking, and you try to connect with the emotion that they're expressing as well as the words, right? And then try to validate each other's feelings. So you see it this way, you feel like that, this is how I see it, it's how I feel about it. So at least we can keep separate what the issue is for us emotionally and deal with that. Recognise the difference, right? Now the second thing is you're going to discuss now, because you're a little calmer and you're a little more focused and you're staying with each other, you can now discuss the problem. Right? The emotion's been dealt with. So identify and understand the other person's concern and respond. Before you respond to state your views. Gottman talks about making a soft start-up. This is not like driving your tank through the kitchen, with all guns blazing. I'm going to get you, I'm going to blast you to... No, just come in softly, come in gently. Don't, because your voice alone signals the war has already started, right? So if you come in, and there are trigger words which will set you off. Things like, just like your mother. And boom, you just lit the fire, it's gone. Yeah? So try to minimise that kind of response and defensiveness that can occur by coming in gently and with a sort of a winsome, way of entreating. Honey, we need to talk. Can we talk about this? No, not right now. Okay, well, maybe in half an hour, or So we try to find a soft way of getting into it rather than if you come in harsh, all it'll do is get out of control. Clearly define the problem that needs resolving and be specific about what the problem is. Now, I've seen a lot of people argue about stuff, never identify clearly what the problem is, so they actually end up arguing about and resolving a problem that doesn't even exist. Right? And you'll get into that if you change the subject as you're arguing. We started off here and then we got to here and then you responded to that and then I said this. And it's like one couple I asked, so what are you actually arguing about? And they go, well, I don't know. We started. I don't know. It's like possible to lose the thread because the subject keeps changing all the time and you're just into warfare, scoring points, being out of control. Don't try to solve the problem yet until you've defined it, you're clear about it, you both agree. Now, here's the thing. Over the years, I've had people come to me and they'll say, so what do you want to talk about? And they'll say, he's the problem. So I look at him and he say, I don't have a problem. She has the problem. Right? Okay, so we got two problems. Right. And you know what? When you blame in relationship, it doesn't go anywhere. It just gets worse. I mean, it does go somewhere, it goes down, right? Blaming doesn't solve anything. So what I always say to people is, I'm not interested in blaming. It's just interesting that when you came tonight, that all three of you arrived. Huh? Well, see, we're paying money to see this dude, and he's crazy. You know, he's lost the plot, and we haven't even started. I say, no. It's like when you came in, there's you, the husband, and there's you, the wife, and there's the relationship. And you're here because the relationship's not working. Right? And when you say he's got the problem, and you don't have a problem, I respectfully disagree with you, because in any marriage, if one person has a problem, you both have a problem, because the two of you are in a relationship. What happens to one affects the other. So let's not try to score points. Let's recognise that if there's a problem, we need to own it and say we need to deal with it. And it might be that most of the problem lies with you because you've got an issue about something, but that doesn't mean that I'm not interested or that I'm disconnected from it. I'm very much interested in your health and well-being. So tell me what it is, see? That's why it's so important. But we get hooked on defending ourselves and wanting to have our say, and we just muddy the waters, make it difficult to even define what the problem is. Then the third thing is, now that we've defined it, we can solve. I mean, we're not that stupid and irrational that we can't actually work through and agree on logical conclusions to different alternatives. So here what we're doing is, nothing will be resolved without goodwill and respect and mutual cooperation. If you don't have respect for each other, forget it. You're never going to get to resolve anything. If you don't have goodwill and a desire to cooperate and work together, you're pushing mud uphill. So you have to have the basic wanting to be in this relationship and wanting to work together. And if you do, you can get there. It's not rocket science, right? So then what you do is you explore options or alternatives. We can do this to solve the problem. We can do that. We can agree to this. We can compromise. We can keep working at it till we get a resolution. You know, whatever it takes, we can look at all the alternatives and brainstorm those. Just list them down and then go back and tick them off. We can do this. No, that won't work. Forget that one. That's stupid. Well, I was just joking anyway. But okay, so we just list them and we choose one of those, the best solution, and we say, okay, let's give it a go. Let's work it out this way. So we develop an action plan. This is what we're going to do. And when you have developed it, you implement it. You have to agree, right? You're going to do this, I'm going to do that, this is how it's going to happen, and this is when it'll start, right? You'll laugh when I tell you, but I've had a lot of people, mostly, I'm sorry to say men, but, you know, in the counselling room, they will, yeah, no, it's a good plan. But next week they come back, and when I asked them, so how'd the plan go? Didn't work. Well, how come it didn't work? What happened? He didn't try. So I did. I said, so you were arguing about all your undies being on the floor I mean, can you imagine? And you agreed that you were going to put them in the wash basket. Did you try? He said, yeah, I did. She said, now come on. No, I said, did you try? He said, I did. I said, well, how come you couldn't get them in the thing? He said, well, I was on the other side of the room, and when I threw it, it didn't go in. I said, so you're a lousy shot. He said, no, there was a lid on the top. I said, come on, you're messing with me. She said, no, he's not messing with you at all. He's being ridiculous. He's being playful. He's being stupid. I said, is that fair? He said, well, I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed that this is such a stupid thing that we're arguing about. I said, well, but you seem to like to keep it going. Why don't you do what you said you were going to do? And he said, I'll try this week. So then it worked. And last of all, you evaluate. Did it work? If it did, celebrate it. If it didn't, come back and get another option and work on it. Now, that's just a simple little plan, like it's a 3-step or something, 3 or 4-step plan that you can implement on how to deal with conflict. But if you don't recognise some of these key elements in the process, you'll never get to resolve it at all. And it will begin to eat out the heart of your connection with each other, right? And this is true with kids, your relationship as parents. It's true in the workplace. It may work a little bit differently depending on the issues, but by and large, this is what stops us from getting to resolving our anger and our conflict in an amicable kind of way, so we can work as a team, as partners, and get on with the job and develop a greater sense of intimacy and connection. Well, I haven't talked for too long. I don't think it's only been an hour and a half. But you were having fun, weren't you? I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you for being here, and I hope that this has been practical and helpful. And you know, it's interesting, but when you read what the New Testament has to say about relationships and about dealing with seriously, when you think about the conflict that existed in the church in the early days and the way in which Jesus and the Apostle Paul and Peter dealt with conflict, it wasn't always easy, but it was a matter of being able to listen to and understand each other's heart and get to the place where they could be heard and then work together on the same goal that they had established for the spread of the gospel. So thank you, and let's just have a prayer as we close. Gracious Father, we are so thankful for your presence today and for the opportunity to worship and to fellowship together. We thank you for the instruction of your word that encourages us to get along with each other and to enjoy the fruits of the gospel by living together in peace and harmony and understanding. Father, sometimes that can be difficult, and we often see it as all about me or all about the other person. But help us to be open to each other and to allow your love to guide us and your Spirit to teach us ways in which we can really respect and trust and care for each other, connect with each other, and be able to experience the joy and happiness that you want for us in our families, in our marriage, and in our relationship with others. So bless us now and keep us in your love is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.